Hey everybody, today I'm talking about 10 underappreciated board games. Now, rather than doing a standard top 10 list, I thought I'd do a bit of a mini series and talk about 10 games from episode to episode. That way I can cover more of them. I feel really strongly about all these games, and the reason for kind of creating this series is because I always find that whenever I consume board game media, there are always the same games being talked about, and these ones are very rarely discussed. And I think these are fantastic games that I strongly advocate, and maybe they would pique your interest. Now, I have reviewed all of these, so if you want to check out those individual reviews, then you can. However, I understand when I create reviews, only people who are looking for that particular game would see that review. So if I do a more generic compilation list like this, then more eyes will be seen by these games, or more eyes will see these games, and therefore maybe more people can check these games out. So let's get started at the first game I'm going to talk about. So the first game I'm going to talk about is Mexica. Now, Mexica is a game by one of my favourite designers, Wolfgang Kramer, and he is known for his area control games. Now, this is a game that's been around for, I think, nearly 20 years now, and is still in print, so it has been consistent. It's obviously sold relatively well throughout, but again, I don't hear anybody talk about this one, and I think that is because area control games are generally quite a saturated market anyway. There are a lot of these kind of blazing games, ones that are really in your face, smash mouth style games with miniatures and stuff, which tend to get a lot of the spotlight. However, if you want something a bit more distinguished, a bit more sophisticated than those kind of games, then I'd really recommend checking out a game like Mexica. So Mexica is a game where you have you have an island with a grid on it basically, and you have your own player piece. And the way the game works is that you're allocated a number of action points at the start of each of your turns. So you've got 6 of these action points to spend how you like. You can use them to move around the island. You can spend a bunch of points to teleport from one end to the other. And the idea is you're trying to carve out this island by placing these different river tiles. And then you are going to place or kind of erect temples in these different regions to try and control those regions. It's a really competitive, very cutthroat style game where you can try and block people in certain spots, you can stop them from moving, you can force them to use their action points, but it's so wonderfully designed, it's almost abstract in its feel, and this is one of those games where I can tell it stood the test of time well and weathered the storm of time, because the rules are so streamlined, they're so simple, and the gameplay really does lie in jockeying for position, trying to trump your opponent to get the most points out of each of these regions. A gorgeously produced game with wonderful table presence, and the gameplay itself is rock solid. That is Mexica. The next game I'm going to talk about is a game called Signorie. Now, Signorie is I suppose it's pretty bland on the face of it. It's one of your traditional Euro-style games where you're the Italian aristocracy in a foregone year. However, the mechanisms in this game are quite popular today. Games like they use the dice drafting mechanism are quite popular, and Signorie does that. But on top of that, it does quite a unique twist on the dice drafting genre, because in this one you have different colours of dice on these different pools, I suppose, and when you're taking these dice, you are going to factor in a number of things. So first off, you are going to have to spend money depending on which type of dice you take, but depending on the pip value, you're going to get a discount off that fee. So if the dice would cost me 5 to take and I ended up taking a 3 die, then I would end up only having to spend the difference of 2. But you might think, why don't I always take the higher dice and get the best discounts? It's because if you ever go over a certain threshold, then you are going to miss out on quite a powerful bonus. And I think that's a really cool decision. There are only a couple of dice in each pool anyway, so you want to be the first to get there. And I really do like the way that works. And on top of all of this, you've got those standard Euro things such as climbing tracks, etc. But I really do love the engine building side to this as well, because whenever you take a certain action, you can upgrade your player board, which means when you draft certain dice going forward, then you're going to get these kind of tag-on actions to really ramp up your player powers and give you more mileage from each turn. This is a wonderfully designed game, one that really impressed me. If you can get over the look and the lack of theme, I suppose, if you're that kind of gamer, then I would really recommend checking this one out, because it offers a lot of interesting choices. The dice drafting mechanism is fantastic, and it's just a lot of Euro goodness in a relatively unknown game. So that is Signorie. The next game I'm going to talk about is polar opposite to a game like Signorie. This is Parade. Now, Parade is a small box card game where you are trying to gain as few points as you can by the end. It's a very beautiful game based on the Alice in Wonderland story, where you have a bunch of cards depicting all these different characters, and I think they're numbered from 0 to 10. And the idea is that you are going to have a big queue of character cards in the middle of the table, and then from turn to turn you're going to end up playing a card to the back of that queue. And depending on the value you've played, you're going to skip over a number of cards matching that number. Then anything after that, if it's either lower than the number you've played or of the same type, then you're going to end up taking it into your tableau, which can potentially cost you points at the end of the game, which you don't want. Now, this is a really cool system that I haven't seen before, where the higher numbers are great because they let you skip over a number of cards, but as the game goes on and on and on, the queue's getting longer and longer, and when you end up playing those high numbered cards, you're going to end up taking everything after that, which is quite interesting because you're going to get a lot of points if you have a lot of cards of a certain type. But if you have the most of a certain type, then they're all going to flip face down, and they're only going to be worth 1 point each. So sometimes you want to be in the lead, so you're not getting the full punch of those points. But having too many of those is going to cost you a bunch of points anyway. So it really is a game about spinning plates, trying to keep your score as low as you can. And I think this is a really unique twist on a card game like this. I've not seen that mechanism before, and I think the scoring is really interesting, and it does stretch you in quite an interesting way. I really recommend this one. This is Parade. If you like your filler games, and this is definitely one to check out. The next game I'm going to talk about is going back to a Euro-style game, but a lighter one. This one is Shakespeare. So first off, I think Shakespeare is a great theme for a game. So this is a game about putting on these productions, these plays. You're trying to get the best actors, you're trying to dress them in the most lavish costumes, and you're trying to put together a stage where you are placing these tiles, trying to build it symmetrically and getting bonuses as you go. So all that is really cool in itself. A lot of pretty standard Euro things there, but it does what it does very well. It has a cool action selection system where you are activating different characters to get their bonuses, to buy new costume parts, to buy new staging, to climb up these different tracks. But the thing I really liked about this game was the kind of core mechanism of how many actions you're going to take and the initiative order. Because before you even take any of your actions, you are going to blind bid with a number of your action tokens in your hand and reveal them simultaneously with all the other players. And whoever bid the fewest tokens is going to go first. And whoever bid the most actions is going to go last, but however they're going to get to take more actions from turn to turn. So that really is a cool mechanism where, am I willing to sacrifice a bunch of actions in order to get priority of going first and getting the particular action that I want? Because there is a very few limited options out there in terms of grabbing the things that you really want. You might want a bunch of the best costumes, and you're willing to sacrifice the other actions in order to do that, or you might want a particular actor to add to your tableau. And I think that is such a great, agonizing decision to make from turn to turn. Sometimes you'll find yourself thinking, I really want this action, so I'm willing to bid a single action in order to go first. But your opponent doesn't care at all, and he ends up bidding all of his actions. So you could have actually still gone first by bidding 4 of your actions. I think it's a wonderful mechanism, and I'd love to see it be used again. But the rest of the game is fantastic. It's got gorgeous artwork. I think it is quite hard to get hold of nowadays, but hopefully it will come back into reprint. And if you can ever get your hands on this one, it is a rock solid Euro that's a lot of fun to play. And it's relatively quick as well. You can get this one played in under an hour. So that is Shakespeare. The next game I'm going to talk about is pretty strange because it's from a very popular designer, being Stefan Feld. This is Luna. Now, Luna is a game I never hear anybody talking about, and I don't quite know why, because, again, Stefan Feld is immensely popular, and in my opinion, this is one of his better games. Now, I love Stefan Feld games, but still, this one is right up there for me. And if I was ever to think of a game that is truly unique, I can't think of anything else that is similar to Luna. That in itself is quite inviting to me. I love the idea of a game being completely unlike anything else. And this is a game that's really out there. The theme is wild, as you are kind of the lord or the leader of all these different disciple factions. And you're using these different disciples dotted on these little boards to exhaust them and collect these different action tokens, which can give you lots of different things to do, such as moving your disciples around, trying to get to the regions where the moon priestess is to get you points. You're trying to use them to basically I suppose, ascend people to the main temple to get these, to get area control. We can kick other people off depending on the number tile you've just landed on. You're trying to avoid certain locations based on where this apostate is, because if you have the most disciples where he is, you're going to suffer negative points. And you're trying to build shrines as well, which can give you boosted actions as well and make you only need to exhaust a single disciple with each action rather than the two. And I love the precision and the way you can line up your turns in this one. It is borderline abstract as well, where you can very clearly see what's going to happen. And I love the way this game kind of frazzles your brain and thinking, if I do this, then I can do this, then I can do this, then I can send them here. But if I do that in the wrong order, it's not going to work. And that kind of clockwork, that mechanical edge of things really does work for me. I know it doesn't work for everybody, but if you do like Stefan Feld games, then and Luna has somewhat evaded you, please check it out, because it is way up there with his better games, and it looks great, it feels unique, it's fun, and it's got a lot of autonomy in this game, and I think that is great. So that is a Luna. The next game I'm going to be talking about is a game called Shipshape. Now, Shipshape is an ultra-light, kind of puzzly tile placement game based on on a pirate theme, I suppose, as you are trying to fill your cargo up with all these different items, trying to get the most points as you can. But the way these tiles are shaped is extremely interesting, because they're basically these squares with different sections cut out of them and some covered up with these different symbols. And as you're placing these on, you're kind of covering up existing ones, you're showing some through, you're trying to basically get the most points as you can by having the most gold or having the most cannons. And not having the most contraband, but having the second most. And it really is a game about constantly adjusting things to try and get the most out you can. I love that puzzly aspect where you're fiddling things around, you're tinkering, trying to get the maximum amount of points out of each turn. The way you're going to get these tiles in the first place is interesting, because you're playing this blind bid card system as you're taking tiles from the stack, and whoever plays the highest number is going to get first choice. And it all comes together in a really fun and satisfying 30-minute game that scales really well. I think it's in plays 2 to, in fact, I even play solo up to, I think, like 5 players or so. And it really has been one of my go-to games that you can introduce to anybody. And while I tend to really like more involved strategy games, this one I'm happy to play any single time. It really has become a staple of my collection, and I just really enjoy the way this one comes together. And in terms of being so mass appealing and being so accessible, being so fun, then I'm so surprised this one hasn't taken off as I think it should have, because with the right momentum behind this one, this could be up there with the blockbuster board game names, because it just ticks all the boxes for being a popular game for me. That is Shipshape. The next game I'm going to talk about is a game called Kashgar, Merchants of the Silk Road. Now, this is a game very much in the vein of games like Splendor and games such as Century Spice Road, as you are generating a bit of an engine trying to race to get to a certain amount of points before your opponents do. However, instead of collecting tokens and spending gems and things, this one works in using a quite unique card column system called caravans. We have 3 different columns of cards, and you are always going to be able to activate the front card of each of those columns at any time. And when you do, you're going to take the card you've just activated and put it back to the back of that queue. And when you do that, you're going to do things such as collecting different resources. You're going to be fulfilling contracts which are available out there that are going to get you your points in the first place. You're going to be collecting gold. You're going to be collecting camels. And I love the way that you can line up your different caravans in this game and basically create these great engines where, if I use this card, then I'll be able to have enough resources to use this card, which will let me use this card, and by the time this card's done, this card will be here. And that puzzly element to it does shine through wonderfully. Again, the engines are great because you can build long churning engines where you're going through everything, or you can create very precise, very narrowed down engines which you are only using for a very specific need. And it's a wonderful little game that only takes 30 minutes to play again. And I think maybe the look of this game has put people off because I think the aesthetic doesn't quite match the mechanisms. It really is quite a fun, breezy little game, whereas the artwork and things, and I suppose the name, is quite stuffy. But again, if you can get over that, then I would highly recommend you give Kashgar a go, because it really does strike that great balance of being accessible but still having lots of meaningful decisions from start to finish. That is Kashgar, Merchants of the Silk Road. The next game I'm going to talk about is a game called Newton. Now, Newton is, by, again, extremely popular designers, being Simone Luciani, with another co-creator as well. And Luciani games are usually immensely popular, but for some reason this one seems to have not quite peaked like the other ones have. It's still been extremely highly rated. You know, it's got a good rating on Board Game Geek. It's relatively well ranked as well. However, in terms of coverage and people knowing about it, I don't think it's spread very often. And I'm quite surprised why that's not the case, because this game is way up there with his other great games. I rate this one about a 9 out of 10, so this is one of my favourite games I've ever played. And it does a lot of things extremely well. It has a great satisfying engine building element to it, where you're playing these cards, and as you play more matching symbols, you're getting these compounded actions. As you're travelling around this map, you're trying to put books on your bookshelf to get these points, just start generating points. You're climbing up this track to get different technologies. You're acquiring new cards to improve your options to do things. And all these things come together so seamlessly. The synergies are wonderful, as one part of the game just is needed to boost your ability on another part of the game. It plays quickly again, so this one you can play in under 90 minutes. It scales really well. It's got a lot of things going on in this game that I think it's got nothing wrong with this game whatsoever. I can't think of a single negative thing about it. Maybe again, the box cover isn't overly appealing. It doesn't have... I suppose the theme is quite niche, people aren't going to be extremely excited about a game about Isaac Newton. But, the gameplay itself is up there with the best of the best Euros. So, again, if that is your kind of thing, you like your meatier Euros, you like building an engine, you like a bit of card play, then Newton is right up there with those type of games. The penultimate game I'm going to talk about is Citrus. Now, Citrus is one of those games where if I ever get the chance to talk about it, I do. This one is a tile placement game, and I suppose an area control game as well, as you have this big gridded board, and on these different sections of this board you've got these thinkers, and these thinkers are going to be where you're trying to dominate basically to get the most points, and whoever's got the most tiles or controlling the most tiles connected to that thinker is going to get the most points, and second place is going to get the second most points. There's so many things I like about this game. First off, the mechanisms themselves are streamlined. There is no bloat on this game whatsoever. It just has what it needs to have to get the most game out of this experience. Second off, I love the way you acquire the tiles in this game. You have this gridded system where these tiles are laid out, and this grid is kind of just offset slightly, where at the narrowest point on this grid there's only 2 tiles, and at the widest part I think there's 4 tiles. And you can either take a row or column of these tiles, providing you can place them immediately on the board. But whenever you do that, you're going to have to pay a coin for each one. And you're going to start boosting up your different orchards, I suppose, depicted by all these different colours, and getting points by doing so. But when you can basically claim these different orchards by placing one of these workers from your player board on them, which shows that you're controlling that particular type. But they are very limited, so you want to have your workers on the board so that you've got some coverage, but these thinkers only score when they're completely surrounded. So if they're not surrounded and you've got no more workers to place, and your opponent's saying, you know what, I'm not going to go finish that one because you're going to get a bunch of points, then you're going to have to be forced to take one of your workers off the board, meaning that all that investment you've just done is wasted, essentially. You do get points for them, but you're not going to control the thinkers. And that is such a cool decision. And on top of that, you are incentivized to pull things off the board when you've got more workers on your board. So the fewer workers you have on your board means you're going to generate more money when you pull them off. It's so easy to explain, but the strategy is deep. There's some great encroachment you can do by sneaking into other people's regions and getting a lot of mileage out of a single placement of tiles. And it really does have a Reiner Knizia style feel to it, where The game just does what it needs to do with no bloat, no fussiness, no fiddly rules, and it is just remarkably well done. That is Citrus. And the final game I'm going to talk about today is Ohanami. This one only came out, I think, a year ago, or maybe a year or two ago. This is a simple drafting game, a card drafting game. As you're collecting these different cards, they're going to get you points in different ways. You know, you've got these ones that give you points in the first round, ones that give you more points in the second round, and ones that give you even more points in the third round. But they do kind of compound. So if you get a certain type in the first round, then they're going to score for all 3 phases. But what I love about this game is the restrictions that are placed upon you, because when you draft these cards, not only are you considering the symbol that you're playing, every card has a unique number on them as well. And you're going to have the ability to play these cards on 3 different columns. And when you do, you're just going to place them either above or below an existing number on there. So if I had, say, a 10 and the card I had is an 11, I couldn't place it below that 10 because it has to go in kind of chronological order or numerical order. And as the game goes on, you're going to find yourself being backed into more and more of a corner and limiting your options on where you can place these things, because again, you can't place things in between numbers. You can only ever go above your highest card or below your lowest card. And that just adds a whole new dimension to card drafting. For a relatively simple game, this one just does what it does extremely well. It's so fun, it's quick, there's different approaches you can take. You've got to act tactically but also strategically. And I love that kind of tension of, you know, am I going to take a gamble and jump massively up so I can play the card that I want, but potentially end up sacrificing card and scoring negative points in future rounds? What a filler game this is. This is one of the best filler games to come out in years, in my opinion. That is Ohanami, just a remarkable game. So that concludes this list of 10 underappreciated games. Hopefully there's something on here that has piqued your interest and that has kind of swayed you to check them out, because I stand strongly behind these games. I think they're all fantastic. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have, please hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.